Okay, welcome back or welcome to On the Mic, where we explore stories of courage, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. Today is our third episode, and we are thrilled to have Tessa Veksler with us. Tessa is a passionate advocate for justice and a fearless voice for our people during these challenging times. Tessa was the first Shabbat observant president of University of California, Santa Barbara. And after October 7th, she received a barrage of threats and intimidation. But armed with Jewish pride, she did not back down. Her hashtag, "We are not going anywhere." And today, Tessa will share her journey with us about taking bold risks, navigating the courage to speak out against hate, finding hope in moments of adversity. Tessa, we're very excited to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you, today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I feel like ever since I first started following you on social media, I was like, okay, I need to have her on the podcast. Everyone needs to hear from you. I feel like you have such clarity, and when you speak so articulately. I watched your interview with, what's it called? I'm blanking now, but it was a great interview. And I was like, okay, you were on the spot and you just answered so well. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are, where you came from, just for people who have no idea about your story.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. And I guess for me, when I start talking about my story, I always have to mention my family background. So my parents and my brother immigrated from the former Soviet Union to the United States in 1990. And when they came here and till today, they're very secular, cultural Jews. And so that's really how I grew up. I grew up in the East Bay area in California. And when I was growing up, the Russian-speaking Jewish community in my area was very involved in our local Chabad. And so my parents, by association, were like, okay, you can do Hebrew school. Didn't really think much of it. Like, whatever, it's every Sunday. And then by the time my bat mitzvah rolled around, my parents were like, well, we're not doing all of that, but we're glad that you enjoyed your time at Hebrew school. And I was like, well, the whole point was that I was learning up to this point, and it never happened. And so from then, my parents then kind of transferred me over into a more reform environment. And I was just very confused because I grew up around Orthodox people and then was transferred into a completely different sect of Judaism. And so I would say in high school, I was a little bit lost in terms of my Jewish identity and where I stood. And so my junior year, summer going into my senior year of high school, my parents heard about a program called TJJ with NCSY, and they sent me on this month-long trip, not really knowing what NCSY was and kind of what this trip was going to look like. And so you can imagine their surprise when I came back and I was like, I'm so inspired. I want to be Shomer Shabbos. They're like, what happened? So they were very taken aback because they really didn't know what program they were sending me on. But for me, it took going to Israel and kind of seeing what Jewish life looked like there for me to see myself in that sect of Judaism, where I finally felt like, okay, this is the type of Jew that I want to be. And so I kind of got that clarity and started moving in that direction. And so I ended up taking a gap year, doing Bar Ilan, Israel XP at Bar Ilan University before going to UC Santa Barbara. And so that's kind of how I got to that point.
Wow. So if it sounds like you were always kind of thinking about what it means to be a Jew and your Jewish identity, like, I'm impressed from such a young age to have that awareness, and then to make a decision in high school, going on a program, like, takes a lot of courage. I'm curious, at this point in your journey, how do your parents feel about your choices and where you are?
I think they're very proud. And I think, as most Jewish parents in the world today, of course, they are nervous because the more public facing you are, you expose yourself to the risks of what it means to be a public facing person. And so as any parent, of course, they're worried, but I think that over time, their concerns over my religious observance have kind of melted away because they've seen the ways in which it's really benefited my life, both like mentally in terms of my career, in terms of my time at UCSB and the way that I decided to act. And I think that they understand that so much of my decision making and my strength is derived from my Judaism. And so they've definitely grown to accept it, and they're very proud, I would say.
Wow, that's really powerful to hear, because I do believe that so much of what makes us who we are is based on what Judaism gives us. And for you to say that, I did want to take a moment, guys. Raquela is not with us. She's running everything backstage, but she's sick today, so she's not here. We're very sorry not to have you here, Raquela. And if you are joining us live, feel free to comment and tell us where you're joining from. And obviously, we're going to take questions, and we're going to give you a chance to come on live if you'd like. And we're so happy that you are part of the United Against Anti-Semitism community. We're always looking to grow. We always want to hear your feedback. So don't forget to share. I'm new to hosting the podcast, so that was my little introduction. But when you came to UCSB, did you think about wanting to become student president? Was that on your agenda?
Not immediately. I would say when I was at Bar Ilan, I had already applied and accepted UC Santa Barbara. And when I decided that I wanted to do my gap year, I deferred for a semester with the expectation that I would do basically half a gap year, and in January I would start school. And so because of COVID, I was able to stay the full year and do my UCSB classes online at the same time. And so I basically do my Torah studies from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Israel time, and then from like 10 p.m. until 1, 2 in the morning, I would do my UCSB classes online for the second half of the year. And so I really felt like I had, like this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, where like I was having this experience in Israel and I was living this reality, but I was also very plugged in to what was happening at UCSB. And so when I saw kind of in May 2021, there was a war, and a few weeks after the war at UCSB, divestment was on the table for student government. And I just was looking at like how ironic that all these people, all these students that have never stepped foot in Israel were bringing this resolution after I had just been in a bomb shelter for 10 days. And so I realized like, there was a lot of advocacy that needed to be done on the student government front at UCSB. And also there was a history of very strong Jewish leadership in student government at UCSB. So before me, there were actually 3 Jewish female student body presidents. And so I had people to look up to. And when I came back, the student body president at the time was Israeli. And she asked me if I would be interested in working for her in her office. And so a couple weeks into that, I was at a Shabbat with my friends. And I was like, just so you guys know, like that's going to be me in like 3 years. And they were laughing. They were just like, maybe try like the entry level position before you claim that you're going to be the CEO of the whole thing. But it kind of
dream big, right? Dream big.
Yeah, and I ended up getting there because I really had my heart set on it in many ways, because I thought that it would be meaningful to have someone like me in that role, and also because I would have the power to affect a lot of change. Both on the campus for all students, but also for the Jewish community.
And I don't know, I remember reading somewhere that you experiencing hate wasn't the first time at UCSB. It was something you had also experienced in high school. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. I when I came back from Israel, I was it was like my first love. I was just like obsessed with it. I was talking about it all the time. I was in a public school. There were barely any Jews, barely any Israelis. And so I think everybody was kind of like taken aback by my sudden, like, this girl that's coming in and like so passionate about this topic. And we had...
Where were you in high school? Where'd you live?
In the East Bay area, in a city called Walnut Creek. And so we had a mock Congress my senior year, and there was a student who brought a divestment resolution to the table, and I brought like the exact opposite resolution. And so we ended up debating hers on the floor. I ended up winning the debate, but it also, I ended up getting a lot of hate because of that situation. It was like the first time that I'd really like been super vocal in that type of a setting. And so my house got vandalized a couple of times. My parents,
In high school. That's crazy.
yeah,
That's
my senior year. Yeah, it was very intense. And especially for my parents, it was like a flashback, because when my parents immigrated with my brother was 7. And so like, imagine you're coming with one child, not really thinking you were going to have another, and you came to bring them into a country where they would be free from what they had experienced in the Soviet Union. And so having the same thing happen to a child that was born here, to the place that they thought was their escape, was definitely, I would assume, very traumatizing. But it definitely kind of exposed me at a young age to like, this is the reality of being Jewish anywhere in the world, is that there will always be people that are against us.
Wow. I don't even feel like I actually ever really like thought that until October 7th hit. Like, it didn't cross my mind so much, I guess. I mean, I did grow up in a religious community, and then I moved to Israel, so I was always surrounded by a very supportive environment. So I didn't have that like harsh reality that was thrown in your face. So probably that's kind of what gave you the courage and desire to take the position you did in UCSB, because you saw so clearly what an issue it was from, unfortunately, such a young age. Like, it's not something a high school girl should ever have to deal with, right? It's just, and in America, like it's and it was before October 7th, so it makes you realize what a problem we have. I'm curious if there's any Jewish female leaders that you draw inspiration from, or anyone that's inspired you in your journey.
So, I mean, yeah, of course. I think that like any Jewish person with a platform, especially one that wasn't particularly focused on Jews or Israel before October 7th, that's really taken the risk of what it means to stand up for our people, knowing that you have, money, career, anything to sacrifice. I really admire those people. And especially, I would say, like, even on the non-Jewish side, the like non-Jewish women who've spoken really bravely about this. 2 people I'm thinking of are like Elika Laban, Caroline Demore, like those women who really like put their necks out, and they're not Jewish, but they're calling a spade, and they're seeing anti-Semitism, and they're calling it out for what it is. And I think, and then of course on the Jewish women's side, I'm very lucky that because I was kind of thrust into the role that I have now and the platform that I have now, I've met a lot of the women that I was really admiring from afar. And so I draw a lot of inspiration from them. I learn a lot from them. And I think we've built like a very strong community of Jewish female activists on social media, for sure.
Could you give advice to someone who doesn't feel like they necessarily have a network or community, or isn't as, in an influential position yet, to be able to create those connections, or how to find inspiration, how to find the courage? Like, what would you suggest?
I think I'll give you kind of like a 2-sided response, because I think that activism doesn't necessarily need to look like the social media person. And so like, I would say that the average person who cares really deeply about Jews and about Israel isn't the type of person to be, doing all like the stuff on social media. And so I think it's okay to also be someone who is an advocate in other ways, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your career, whether it's just showing up as a proud Jewish person in a non-Jewish workplace. And that's how I felt in student government, is that like, I was the CEO of this nonprofit, and I was so proudly Jewish. And most of the issues that I had focused on throughout my time in student government had nothing to do with the Jewish community. And so people kind of gathered this respect for me just as a campus leader. And I also happen to be Jewish. And so they respected me for that. And so I think that's like a huge part of what it means to be an advocate, is being like a Jewish person that people really admire. And we show like, this is what it means to be Jewish. And in terms of building a network, I'm someone who, even before I had all of this, like I was the type of person where if, I'll just give my boss as an example, like I said I wanted to work in PR, he came recommended to me, and I just messaged him on LinkedIn like nonstop for months on end, and he didn't really respond to me until months later. But it's one of those things like, you just never know who will respond. And so I just think my recommendation is to always kind of take a leap of faith and reach out to the people that you admire, because you really don't know. And I also think post October 7th, Jews are just more interconnected than we've ever been. And I think that like,
yes,
it doesn't really matter if like you're a super famous Jew or you're not, like everyone is just really connected and speaking with each other. There was like never a time before October 7th that Jewish celebrities were meeting with Jewish students and talking to them and supporting them. And so I think some of the barriers that may have existed before don't exist anymore. And so I think like sometimes it's just about taking that leap and reaching out to people, and you never know.
I really love that. I think both of those pieces of advice are excellent. And I actually heard Barry Weiss. I was at a big federation event in Miami, and she said that exact point. She said, never have we been more connected. And I think if it's the one thing that we look at that came out as a positive of October 7th, it's that unity, and it's that feeling of brother and sister with whatever Jewish person you meet, wherever they are, whatever their background is. And I love how you can, like you're saying, you can reach out to someone that you might never have felt the courage to do that, and they will hopefully be able to connect with you. So yeah, that's beautiful.
I think it's also something I've noticed is that like the average Jewish person that maybe wasn't super connected to Israel felt October 7th. Like I met Jews that were not super involved, and they were like, why am I feeling this way about October 7th about people I don't know? And I'm like, because you may not even realize it before, but like they are our family, extended, but they are. And so like I think for a lot of Jews, it's been like a awakening in a way that we are really all connected, and we feel this on such a deep level. It's a very unique thing about our peoplehood, is that like when one Jew is hurting somewhere, our entire Jewish world feels it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I mean, as painful, I think with the hostages, it's amplified times 100 with it, in the joy and the pain and all of it. And it's it's affected every single one of us,
Exactly.
Can you share maybe a pivotal moment where you had to like risk being disliked or jeopardizing your career to stand up for the values that were important to you, and like how you found the courage to take that leap?
I would say like every single day. But the thing is, like, when I was in middle school and high school, I was never the popular kid. I was always the kid that was like kind of bullied. I was in theater. Yeah, I was not. I was always the kid that would like cry to my mom because I was being made fun of. And so I was just kind of, and for the thing is though, so much of it rolled right off of me. And I never changed anything. Like I never, people would make fun of my clothes, but like I still wore like whatever I wanted. So it's just one of those things where I think from a young age, I kind of had an awareness. And I think it was also just a lesson that my mom was saying is like, they're all going to regret one day the way that they're treating you. And maybe like you have qualities that like people just don't appreciate yet. Or maybe there's something that you're standing up for and people just aren't seeing it yet, but you see it now, and it's okay. If you're confident that you're standing on the right side, you're confident that like you like what you wear and you like the way that you speak and you carry yourself in a way that you respect yourself and the friends and family around you respect you, then you shouldn't really care. And I just said this, I was speaking at UT Austin, and I asked the students in the room.
I love that. Well, that's a great campus.
Great. And I asked the students in the room, I said, raise your hand if you think you're standing on the right side of history. And every single student raised their hand. And so I said, you know, if you're so confident enough to raise your hand that you're standing on the right side of history, then no one telling you that you're not should matter. It doesn't matter if you're sure. And so I think for me, every day was a risk. I knew that every single word that came out of my mouth was a risk to my position, especially I'm talking about like in college, UCSB as student body president. Every word that I said, I knew could be used against me, and which is why I carried myself in a way like that I hoped would be like with grace, with a level head, because I knew that people were watching my every move, both in the sense of like my campus and my peers and my colleagues, but also over time, like the Jewish world. I could see them watching, and I knew that if I had backed down, even like the one young Jewish girl who maybe looked up to me, that it would affect her. And so I felt like a weight on my shoulders, like I need to show up every single day. And so for me, the greater risk was not doing the right thing by my community and by my people. The risk, I would rather lose my job as president, and I almost did, than like lose the respect of my people and for myself.
I have chills because it almost reminds me of Queen Esther. And we're getting to the Purim story, but like really, she was willing to risk like everything to save the Jewish people, and she had that tremendous weight on her shoulders, and to carry that responsibility is not easy, and also to be aware of it, to know that you have to act, talk, think with such intention, and that and to believe so strongly in your mission. Your parents definitely instilled very strong values in you. And I also grew up with parents who always told me, like, you do you, and it doesn't matter what other people think.
Right.
And I think that's such an important thing to remember, like you're saying, because if you're constantly worried about how other people are going to judge you, or, you know, and if you're not true to yourself and really respect and value who you are and what you stand for, then you will cave ultimately. And you saw that, you know, that you were not going to let that happen. And, you know, I think you've inspired so many people with your hashtag, we are not going anywhere, to do just that, right? Like, stay committed to what it means to be Jewish and to speak up for truth.
Exactly. And sometimes we're not even aware, but like we may be the only Jewish person that someone interacts with on a day to day. And it might be the most simple thing. Like it might be like opening the door for someone, or it might be, you know, being in a company and leading a team, but you don't know who is watching. And so like for me, I think every Jewish person should show up like as a representative of the Jewish people. If they're public, if they're private, whatever it may be. Like I have always been very aware that we are judged very unfairly in this world compared to others. And so I almost elevate it as a higher standard for ourselves. Like I believe that Jewish people are special. I believe our community is very special. And so if I believe that we are special, then we should behave in a way that is. We should be, and we do. We rise above so much hate. We literally get the worst of the worst, and we still react with like complete light. Mm-hmm. And so I try to carry that with me, that like if my people for thousands of years have responded with light, then I don't have an excuse not to do exactly the same.
Wow, I love that. I will say, when my neighbor, I lived in Harnof and right when we moved there, we had the Harnof massacre. There was a terrorist attack, and 5 men were killed in synagogue during morning prayers. And one of the men was my friend's husband. And she's actually the dean of a women's seminary. She's amazing. And when like reporters asked her, you know, how do you feel about this? She responded exactly like what you were saying. Like, as Jews, we don't respond with hate. We respond with love and light. And my goal is to just bring more people closer and connected and spread more love in the world. Like, she had not 1 ounce of desire in her heart to like be, you know, take revenge or scream or yell. It was those exact words. And I think that's the beauty of the Jewish people. I'm going to pause for a minute, take a question from our chat. Josh Harris says, I have 2 kids. Are we putting them on the screen or? Oh, there they are. Yes. I have 2 kids in college. My daughter attends a conservative university out of state, and my son attends a liberal university in California. My son feels unsafe from the protest. Do you have any advice for him?
I mean, I think it's a hard thing because the feeling of unease and unsafety, I think that word like has a dual meaning because on campus for me, when I would use that term, my admin would always be like, are you afraid of violence? And I'm like, no, I'm afraid of the possibility of violence. I'm afraid of like me being anxious walking around campus is enough. Not like even if I receive a direct threat, but this anxiety that I have. And so I will say that it's a normal feeling. And in terms of coping with it, the way that I dealt with it was one, making sure that the people in charge were aware that I was feeling it and that other Jewish students around me were feeling it. And so I'm assuming that if your son feels that way, then other Jewish students certainly feel that way. And secondly, it's really like leaning into your community. Like I really leaned on my fellow Jewish students during that time. For me personally, there were times where I needed security because I was being very directly targeted. But and another thing, I guess, to kind of keep in mind is like so many of these students are all talk. And really, so when it comes down to it, they just want to be a part of a community. And that's what they're doing is they're screaming about something because they want something to scream about. And so I think just remembering that sometimes these students, like they may seem scarier than they are. But really like it depends on your campus and just like leaning in to your community and making sure that people are aware of the way that Jewish students are feeling at any given time.
If anyone else wants to ask any questions, feel free, put them in the chat. I did actually, I do feel like I just recently listened to Dan Senor's podcast, Call Me Back, and he mentioned something that it was so chilling for me to hear. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't put it together in my head before, but he said that like apparently like Sinwar and the leaders of Hamas were like aware of all the campus protests going on, and as a result, they felt like they had the upper hand. Like they felt like, oh, America's like supporting us because all these college students are going out and protesting in support of literally terrorism.
Well, it was planned. I mean, they knew this so I'm in a film called October 8th, which is coming out in March. And there's a scene.
It hasn't come out yet? Why do I keep thinking it's come out?
No, it'll be in theaters March 14th. So
oh my goodness, that is so exciting.
Very exciting. But there's a scene in the film that shows a meeting in 1993 of Hamas operatives within the United States. The FBI recorded this meeting. They met in a hotel in Philadelphia, and they're having a conversation about how to advance Hamas's messaging and their goal in the United States. And they list out their plan, which is to infiltrate universities and to talk about their message through the lens of diversity, inclusion, civil rights, et cetera, et cetera. And so this did not come out of nowhere by any means. This was absolutely something that was orchestrated, that was planned. There is significant evidence that shows that SJP is absolutely linked to Hamas because there was so much similar language that was shared post October 7th that was directly from Hamas's mouth. And so of course they're happy because the thing that they had planned all those years ago came true. And, the useful idiots on college campuses fell for it. And they think that they're standing for the right thing when in reality, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, I think the reason for me that it felt so shocking was because in my head, it's like, oh, college protest is a lot of noise, but like, you don't have to let it bother you. Like, it's just happening. Like, who cares? Like, not who cares, but like, that's not the message we need to focus on. We need to focus on how we can become stronger. But then when you realize that literally Israelis have been murdered, our hostages we weren't able to secure a deal because of these dumb college protesters, you're like, oh, I have to do whatever I can as an individual to shut down what's going on in campuses. And like, I'm part of a lot of groups where they share daily take action items. And a lot of them I share, they're directed specifically to universities, and you realize the significance of it. Like, if we don't speak up and condemn what's happening, we are literally giving power to it. And so again, what you did in your campus, and continuing to advocate and speak up and take action, and I think there's ways that every single one of us can do it, regardless of where you are, because you literally just sign a petition. I do about 10 of them a day. I send the email. You don't even think about it, and you know that you're going to make an impact when you realize this. So
right.
To me, that was very eye-opening. I wanted to, would love to just, you've definitely talked a lot about it, but maybe share a little bit about, if you give us a sneak peek about the documentary, what they, what your part is in it.
Yeah, I'm very honored to be in it. So it's executive produced by Deborah Messing, executive produced by Deborah Messing and directed by Wendy Sachs. And there's really an incredible amount of very powerful activists in it. Michael Rappaport, Mustafa Hassan Youssef, Barry Weiss, really like Noah Tishby. And basically the film is called October 8th because it's not a film necessarily about October 7th. It's the film of the aftermath of October 7th. That on October 7th, we experienced the largest massacre against Jews since the Holocaust. And that on October 8th, there were already rallies around the world against Israel, the place where where our people were murdered. And so it kind of follows like, how did we get to this point that already on the day after anti-Semitism was just exploding in America? And so it kind of follows that. It follows how we got there, explaining, that piece that I had just told you of where this all started, how it manifested itself. And it follows, there's a few student stories in there. There's stories of people that worked for human rights organizations, stories about the sexual violence on October 7th, the women that advocated for it to be heard on a national, international stage. And so for me, it's documentary, so I'm interviewed in it, and I'm very fortunate that my story kind of has like this arc that's included throughout the film, but genuinely it's just remarkable. I'm so excited for everyone to see it because it really just exposes, because it shows like kind of the side by side of what we went through and people's reaction to it and how barbaric it was.
When you say theaters, do you think mainstream people, like it's going to be out in regular theaters? Do you anticipate, regular, ordinary people, not Jews, coming to see it?
I hope so. I
also hope so. And I really believe it's so important. I just sometimes do feel, and maybe you also feel like this, like, especially because the more I get into the anti-Semitism space and I follow a lot of people, it often feels like we're speaking into an echo chamber. And I'm curious, like, what helps you feel resilient and hopeful, when you're like, yes, my people know what's going on, but the rest of the world doesn't really get it.
I think that the hope is that I would say at least once a week, like I see or I hear from maybe a non-Jewish person who is following me and maybe found out something that they didn't know. My workplace is primarily not Jewish. And I would say the majority, are aware of what's happening and have been extremely supportive. And so I just think sometimes, like, I do also feel like I'm in an echo chamber, but I am also very aware that many people from UCSB, people that I grew up with, still follow me on social media and therefore are watching. I can see that there are many people that are watching. And so I am hoping that even if I'm the only pro-Israel or Jewish voice that they're hearing, that it creates some dissonance to the rest of the media that they're consuming. And so I think part of my goal for this year really is to break out of that echo chamber. I would love to do more mainstream media, and I would love to work more with like the non-Jewish people that have really been standing up for us, just because our impact, like, yes, it's so important to empower our own people. That's where we should start, because every single Jewish person needs to be a part of this fight. We are such a small percentage of the global population. And so we all have to, all of us first have to get on the same page and be a part of it. But also, I do really believe that we need strong allyship to fight anti-Semitism in this country and abroad. So that's the hope, is breaking out of the echo chamber.
Yes, God willing. I loved what you said earlier, just about realizing like you have no idea who you're going to run into who's never met a Jew before, and that every single one of us as Jews do have that responsibility to carry ourselves in a certain way and to bring light into the world, right, and to demonstrate what it means to be a proud Jew. Before we get to we're going to do a rapid fire round at the end. I did have actually, my cousin is currently a student at UCSB. She did say she was going to come on open mic, but this was our first week trying it out. So I guess we still have work to do, and getting people to show up on the camera. I would love if you had any anecdote or story you could share about someone you've met who was, who reached out to you and told you that they were inspired by what you've done, or if you've been privileged to see that in your.
Yeah, I think I'm very lucky that I feel like I get feedback every single day that keeps me going, that makes me feel like I am making an impact and that people are hearing me. Most recently, I had a student reach out to me who's American, but who is the president of a university in New Zealand. And so they reached out to me and they said, they were saying, like, I've been following you for a few years. There's a lot of anti-Semitism happening in New Zealand. He goes, but I ran for student body president because I saw a Jewish Zionist person who was able to do it. And he did it. And so, and he made history at his university. And so for me, it was so meaningful that even someone who is literally on the opposite side of the world was compelled to take on this position of leadership. And we really keep in contact. And I've been trying to advise him as he kind of encounters different situations on his campus. But of course, it's like a really great feeling to know that your story and your choices resonate with others. And part of, I'm going on this campus tour right now and speaking to these students, and just like the feedback that I get from them, it's so motivating for me to keep going, because I really think that, like, the young Jews of today, like, they really need to feel inspired and to feel connected, and we can't lose the momentum of Jews wanting to be connected. I think that right now, post October 7th, like, we're really in our moment, and we really need to take advantage of it and make sure that when, that this never, like, kind of goes away, that that the Jews that are connected now stay connected, and that they don't become disconnected later. And so I'm very driven by that principle.
Yeah, 100%. I feel the same way. Who are you doing your tour with? What cities have you gone to? Where are you headed next?
Yeah, so my tour is a collaboration with Israel on Campus Coalition. UT Austin was my first campus that I did this week. We have University of Virginia coming up, University of Minnesota coming up. And so, like, yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be throughout the next couple months. And hopefully, I plan on going to as many as I possibly can throughout this year, and hopefully for years to come. Speaking to students is like my favorite thing ever. And so I feel like there's also kind of this sense of relatability. I had just kind of gone through this. I was on a college campus in the post October 7th era. And so I feel very connected. I'm very excited. It's been very fun thus far.
And that's your side job? You also work? Or?
Yeah, I work full-time at a public relations firm. And I travel almost every week to speak, not just college campuses. I speak all across America. It's tiring, but it's so, like, it's like my dream, to be able to.
Now's the time to do it, before you have a family. Because I also travel and speak, but I can pretty much only go twice a year. So give the world all the gifts you have and take advantage of it. Josh had another question. If there were protests against you at UT, or was it a safe environment when you were there?
It was a safe environment. There was a situation that there was a speaker that was literally like my direct, like the antithesis to me. This like pro-Palestinian speaker who was brought in to speak on the exact same evening. And they ended up switching our room last minute because I guess she was speaking at a room that was adjacent or close by. And so that part was like pretty frustrating because they knew to move, the Jewish students, because they knew that the Jewish students weren't going to cause a problem out of it, that we would adapt and adjust. But protests, no. It's something that I'm aware might come up, but it's not really something that I'm super concerned about, generally speaking. But no, at UT, it really wasn't an issue.
Okay, so are you ready for our rapid fire Jewish trivia round?
Oh gosh, yes.
It's fun. It's just for fun. Okay. What was your favorite Jewish holiday growing up, and what is it now?
Well, growing up, I didn't really celebrate a ton of Jewish holidays. We did Passover at our family friend's house, so that was something that I really enjoyed because it was like my one Jewish observance per year. Now, it's hard for me to pick a favorite. I enjoy like Passover because I think I still enjoy Passover because
I feel like you're one of the few Jews who says they enjoy
I
Passover.
know. I don't enjoy like the eating part of like not being able to eat some of my favorite things, but I enjoy the community part of it. And like it's always just like a fun thing to do. If a Seder is actually fun and interactive, but also very much like love Simchat Torah. So
yeah. Okay. Bagels or brekas?
bagels.
Okay. You haven't spent enough time in Israel then. Because
I lived there for a year. But now I'm a New Yorker, so I have
You're in New York, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom or Good Shabbos?
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay. If you could have a Shabbat dinner with any biblical figure, who would it be?
Esther.
There you go. Gefilte fish, yay or nay?
Yay. Controversial, but I'm as Ashkenazi as they come, so
okay.
I'm not a hater.
Challah, do you do classic, raisin, or chocolate chip? Or sourdough? I'm going to add that there.
Classic. We don't need to mess something up that's good.
What's your favorite Israeli city?
Ooh. I would say Jerusalem.
Agree.
Yeah.
Hava Nagila, is it a dance floor favorite or an overplayed anthem?
An overplayed anthem, I think, yeah.
Is your favorite Jewish celebrity?
Ooh.
I know there's a lot to choose from these days.
Right now it's David Schwimmer because he's someone who like is also a mentor of mine. So I really admire him in more ways than one.
Wow. You just get connected with some really cool people. You have to teach us your tricks. What's the most Jewish thing you've done this week? Which we'll say last week because it's Sunday. So
most Jewish thing I've done, I was going to Shabbos.
Shabbos is Jewish.
Yeah.
Yes. And our final takeaway, can you give everyone listening one reason to be proudly Jewish today?
I mean, be proud of how our people carry themselves in the world. I think that like when I'm reading, like whether it's like biblical times and today, the way that I see Israel carrying itself through this time, it makes me so proud to be Jewish. And I just like, I know that when future Jewish generations like read about this story and see how we carried ourselves, they're going to be so proud of us. And so that's a reason to be proud. Be proud now because the future generations will be proud of you.
I love that. I really want to thank you for your time. I know you have such a busy schedule. You're so inspiring to all of us. Keep shining your light. Keep showing up for the Jewish people and keep reminding all of us we're not going anywhere and we are loud and proud. Thank you. Thank you today.
Thank you so much.
We're happy to have you all. Oh, I realized, by the way, Tessa, in the middle of it, I could not remember Naftali Bennett. You had a conversation with them. It's so embarrassing, but I'm not going to.
Okay, it happens. There's a lot of content.
You put me on the spot, and you just answered like that. It was really good.
Yes, it was definitely caught me off guard when he flipped my question on me, but I were talking a little bit backstage, and so I think that his question came from somewhere because I had been talking to him previously,
Right.
so a little bit prepared. But yes, it was a very funny moment.
Well, we're so excited to watch your documentary. Thank you again, and to everyone listening, keep showing up. Please spread the community with your friends, with any students you know who could benefit, any alumni. We want to keep growing. We want to keep getting stronger. And Tessa, you too. Feel free to join. Feel free to share. And thank you guys so much for being a part of this.